Can you tell us a little bit about your experience finding housing?
Yes. I have to say it was all about being patient and persistent. Definitely, even if I found a good option, it was all online. I searched it up on Google. I found a very good option. Continue to look, just making sure that you always have as many options as possible. And it was a lot of dedicating some time to sending emails and calling people so that they can give you virtual tours if you're not in the area, send extra photos, a lot of researching landlords, very important, and a lot of researching good areas in terms of kind of like it being close to the places that I was going to frequent, but also, I guess, danger, statistics, looking up statistics on that. It was just going to be me and my roommate, and so it was just a precaution that I wanted to take. Yes, definitely also a lot of flexibility and prioritizing the kind of things that are more important to you. So whether it is distance or your budget is limiting you for whatever reason, so that's very important.
Can you tell us, looking back, what are some of the tips you'd recommend to an incoming?
I think the number one is to just trust that things will be okay. Everyone in MCAD will be looking out for you, making sure that you are able to get here and live here and be well. And so as long as you're doing your part, doing your research, just trust that things will come together. Last year when I was moving here, a month before, not to scare anybody, but a month before moving, only a month before I had secured my housing. So sometimes it is like that, and that's perfectly fine, and it's never too late. Like, things will always come together. What other tips I have? Be flexible. It would be awesome to find everything you have on your list in an apartment and just live there and it be budget friendly and amazing, but the reality is that you're most likely not going to find everything in the one apartment. So just be flexible, and like I mentioned before, prioritize so that way you know what things you can be more flexible about. Definitely, if you are around the area, visit, but know that a virtual tour is normally just as good. And if it can be live, so if you can be in a video call with the person that's giving you the tour, that's always a lot better because you can be asking questions and getting close-ups of the things that you want to see better. Always check on amenities. I think this is a very basic one, but things like laundry, fridge, microwave, all those kinds of things, I mean, that's normally a given, but just double check.
Tell us about how you found housing.
Yeah, so I moved to Minneapolis from Brooklyn, New York, and I had a few advantages. I had already lived in Minneapolis before. I went to undergrad here about a decade earlier, and I was moving with my partner who has family nearby in Eagan, Minnesota. So the way we did this, and it was during the height of the pandemic, pre-vaccine, so things were a little more complicated, but we had an opportunity to come out here the summer before the first semester. So during that time, we stayed with his family, and for about a week, we did visits at different apartments that we had set up appointments with. And so doing that, we looked at all sorts of different resources to find apartments. We used Craigslist, Facebook, rentals.com, apartments.com, Zillow, PadMapper, and we just booked a bunch of appointments before we got here. And even during that week that we were just zooming around town looking at places, we would add a few more and call people and see what was available. And the way we determined where to look was largely based on what we wanted in a neighborhood. We knew we were going to have a car, so we weren't tied to I have to be within walking distance of MCAD. Which was a big determining factor. And moving from New York, we were like, we want to change of pace. So we looked for a place that we could have a backyard and access to the lakes or parks, that sort of thing. We did a budget before we moved here, which was super helpful, and I highly recommend just like format a budget of like what your monthly expenses are and what your price range is going to be for shopping for apartments. And the way we did it, we were looking for a full apartment, 1 bedrooms. We looked at some 2 bedrooms, but honestly, they were more space than we needed. But if you're moving solo, there's a lot of great options for like room rentals, especially looking on like Craigslist and Facebook. And if you're moving solo, that might be a great way to do it or coordinate with other students. So while we were here during that week, we found a place we liked. We went ahead and signed the lease, and then went back to New York, packed up all our stuff, and we did the U-Haul drive, which it's long, but it's totally doable. You know, we crashed at a cheap motel halfway through and made a whole trip of it, so it's like, it's a doable thing. And then, yeah, we were able to find a place about like a month and a half out. So it seems like there's plenty of leeway. I would just give yourself time.
Okay, so what tips do you have?
So one tip I was thinking of was if you decide that you're going to have a vehicle, and that was a huge deciding factor because you have to consider winter here if you're moving from somewhere that doesn't have winter, because really, unless you live within a couple blocks, you're not going to be wanting to walk to school. It's pretty extreme. And one tip that we were given, because we bought a used car when we moved here, and it's like such great advice, and I would tell everyone to do this, is while you're doing your test drives, to take your vehicles to have a full service check at any of those like CarX or Midas, one of those just like industry standard places. They're not super expensive, and it saves you so much money in the long run. Because we thought we had found a used vehicle we liked, got it service checked, and we found out we were gonna have all these expenses that needed to be fixed on the road. Then we looked at another car that were like, oh, it's a little older, maybe it's not as good. And we got that one service checked, and they're like clean bill of health, saves you so much money in the long run. So that's what I would recommend if you're on a budget and you're looking for a used vehicle. I would also recommend, if you don't know Minneapolis, just do some research on the different neighborhoods, because Minneapolis changes so much within blocks and blocks of itself. So for instance, we ended up in South Uptown, which is really lovely because it's close to the lakes. It's a little more neighborhood, it's a little quieter. I've also lived in Seward, which is a great neighborhood environment. If you want to be close to school, this neighborhood is called Whittier. So that's a great place to look. But you could also be like, you know what, I want to be downtown, that's what I'm looking for. But just do your research in advance of what the different neighborhoods are, and you know, a simple Google will help you break down what's available.
So Jordyn, can you tell us about your housing experience?
Yes. So, finding housing is very overwhelming because in such a large city. I've come from a lot smaller of a town. So one thing I did, I wasn't actually able to visit Minneapolis before I came here. So I would suggest doing that if you can. Otherwise, one tool I used was the Minneapolis Crime Watch. It kind of pinpoints where crime happens, and so I kind of could know where I wanted to be and where I didn't want to be. Luckily, I had a car, so I could kind of spread out a bit more than having to stay around school. But that was one thing I definitely did. And then also just like asking family and friends, and like someone knows someone of someone who might have ever lived in Minneapolis. So that was kind of how I did it. Also, when I was visiting the houses or apartments, I think you can kind of get a sense. You just kind of trust your gut when you're in the area. Spend time around outside of the apartment. I wanted a place that was close enough to where when I parked my car, I had a very close walk into my apartment. So that was something I looked forward to. So
Awesome. Thank you. And looking back, do you have any tips that you'd recommend?
yes, I would definitely recommend coming here if you could. Not being able to come here and then just kind of pick something was a little bit more stressful. I'd also recommend reaching out to alumni. You can find alumni on the website, I believe. And that's really helpful because most of the alumni have lived around here for, of course, the time during school. But yeah, I would reach out to alumni for sure. They're very helpful to know what you need.
Okay, so coming from Alabama, it's 1,000-ish miles, and so we knew there was going to be a few days trip coming up here. So we started looking in like Minneapolis near campus because that seemed ideal. But also I had never been to Minnesota, never visited Minneapolis. I had no idea like what the neighborhoods were like or anything, which in hindsight, crazy, but it all worked out. Yeah, we started looking there, and just based on research of like neighborhoods based on like safety and affordability is where we started looking. But I don't know if it was just like there wasn't much available at that specific time. We also started looking like 3 months in advance, which we wouldn't have been able to get a lease started that early on. That's just because that's just not how the rent market works. Typically 2 or 1 month ahead of time is what they usually prefer. Just because of we're not able to find stuff, we started looking in St. Paul super late in the game. We had 2.5 weeks left till we had to be on the road, and our lease ended in Alabama. And we started looking in St. Paul. We found a rental company that owns multiple buildings in St. Paul, and we've had the best experience with them. They're called Relay Properties, Relay, if you want to look them up. There was a bit of a snafu and I put this more so on me and my partner than I do on the company. So when we got here to the apartment, we had realized that the bedroom was way too small. In our virtual visits of the different virtual tours of the different apartments, they were showing us physically the rooms. They're walking through and us answering questions. And then when it got to the bedroom, we're like, oh, that looks small. And they're like, oh, a queen size bed will fit in here. There, we're like, oh, okay, great. And we just kind of took their word for it. And so when we got there and we started moving all our stuff, and the queen bed did fit in there, but it was literally shoulder to shoulder, and you had to approach the bed from the foot of the bed. Like, and our dressers wouldn't fit in there. We had a dresser in the kitchen. Like, it was mayhem. So we called them that night, and we're just like, this is not going to work. And they quickly found us a place where we are now. It's phenomenal. And it's in the same budget. Their pricing is really good for the amount of space that you get. That's basically the end of my rant on that. I'm sure if we had looked at Minneapolis a little bit later than 3 months, that we would have been a little bit more successful. So not to say you can't find a place that's safe and affordable in Minneapolis. We just were so panicked about it, and we just didn't think to look back again. But I definitely do recommend St. Paul.
That's great. And do you have any tips or reflections that you would recommend or that you would have done differently?
Yes. Don't do a lot of things that I did. The first thing was, if you are able to, we weren't able to, but if you are able to go see apartments in person, that is the most ideal. If you're not able to, or even if you are, ask for a dimensioned floor plan. Super important. And then do your own homework and do your own measurements of your space. Like, this is how big my bedroom minimum could be, or how much of a kitchen I need, or whatever. And even though the company was and still is just very communicative and really transparent, it was just on us that we were just we have to get it. Let's go. So yeah, if you can, make sure you think through all of those things, because you will end up hemorrhaging money like I did. So yeah, if you can visit in person and get a dimensioned floor plan, God bless it. Do that. Also budget well for application fees, moving trucks, moving accessories like hand trucks, dollies, bubble wrap, stuff. So budget is also super important. I took a big swallow because we spent a lot of money.
So I was very lucky to have my significant other come up with me. And of course that helps financially quite a bit. So the only real advice that I can give is that in this market, you're not going to get a great deal. That's just not really going to be a possibility unless you're very, very lucky. Unfortunately, I'm not so lucky. So my best advice is just to check every morning or every afternoon, just to look for something decent or good that you can afford. Because those situations go by really quickly. People snatch them up very fast. So just check every single day.
I think the first thing is about like contacting the RA to get the information the day you're arriving and the time you're checking in with her, because normally the RA can reply the message on time, but sometimes you just can't see it, especially if you're like having an international flight or like flying from other places. So it's better to contact them like a day before to make sure like when you arrive they are ready to help you about it. And maybe I guess most people like they don't live here, like they come from other places, but like you need to make sure the room you're living it's like a single room, double room, or living with other people's. So you need to make sure your stuff is like not too much, because some of the space is really is not big enough for all the belongings you might want to take with. And yeah, and also if you find anything in the room when the RA asks you to sign the form, like please don't feel all the things are like check, good. It's better to go like specifically and check all the details, like the wall, the sink, like the trash can, the fridge, make sure everything's working. Because if you don't check it carefully when you check out, they will count that to your responsibility. They will think like you made it broken or anything. So it's better to just double check, make sure everything, everything already. So yeah, and they will help you to change the whatever you need. Because the first day I came here, the bed was broken and the mattress was dirty with all those things. Yeah, and I texted the RA and she helped me change everything, so which is great. But yeah, just to make sure that. And sometimes maybe because of the building it's old, so something might be like broken. Just don't worry too much. Feel free to contact the people on campus, like campus safety or your RA, to fix it or to change a new one. Because the buildings are old and all the stuff inside is also old. So yeah.
Do you have any tips or recommendations?
I feel another thing is not about the room. It's more like the roommate you're living with. So, because sometimes you can't choose the people you're living with, so it's better to like build like a relationship between even move in or meet in person with them, because yeah, you guys might not like get along with each other really well. And yeah, like some of my friends, their roommates are like more like a party style, and they are like super loud at night, and yeah, they just end up with like moving out. So don't feel like too stressful about like saying it, like you don't feel comfortable or anything, just like point it out and yeah, communicate with each other. I feel that's really important. And also yeah, like cleaning up the room. I feel it's hard, like because each person take like an area, like I clean the floor, you clean the kitchen, but sometimes people don't do it on time. And yeah, it's better to have a plan at the first day and everyone sign their name on it, and just to make sure at the same time everyone do their job right, and you don't need to worry too much about asking them to do it.